Hello, and welcome to the Cine 50mm YouTube channel. No, wait, that's not right. I'm still the Mr. 50mm YouTube channel, and today we are going to talk about the Canon 5D Mark III with Magic Lantern, specifically one of the crop modes. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the one by Dane that was last updated on the 7th of June 2025. Pretty recent stuff. And plus, with all the recent news about video-centric cameras, your Nikon ZRs, Canon C50s, I thought, wow, those cost some money. Why don't we look at something else, like the 5D3, a camera that I already own? So yeah, we're gonna do that. But before we get into it, fair warning to those who aren't in the cult of the magician's lanterns. This is a firmware mod that unlocks raw video options, various resolutions, frame rates, and a bunch of other things. As a result, this is specifically going to be a video that's about, well, video. Moving photos, not stills. The firmware also obviously isn't supported by Canon, it's unofficial, and using it at times can result in a camera that is a lot more crashy than you'd expect. But that is the way the dice roll on Magic Lantern. I'm gonna discuss a couple things in the video. My general Magic Lantern experience on the 5D Mark III. We're gonna talk about dual ISO mode, the high resolution 1x1 3.5K mode, and the 1x3 5.7K anamorphic mode. We'll also get into what I think about them and generally what to look out for if you're gonna use these modes, as well as some other things. I also want to mention that at the time of this recording, September 2025, as I mentioned before, I'm using the newest build from Dane. And again, this was released in 2025, and that means one thing: Magic Lantern is back. There is activity again. Finally, for anyone else watching this, this is not a guide to Magic Lantern. However, I'll post a link to forum posts and videos below, and they'll be the resources that I used in my exploration of Magic Lantern on the 5D3. Again, I'll specifically link to Dane's most current build, and I'll link to Sergio Russo's videos on 5D3 Magic Lantern explainers and comparisons. So for those of you who are still interested in the video, let's dive in. For everyone else, I guess I'll see you next time. Let's play a game. I'll get into the meaty potatoes of the video soon, but before that, I just wanted to demonstrate the power of the Lantern core. I mean, the power of Magic Lantern. I'm going to put up two videos side by side. One of them is going to be the 5D3 video shot without using Magic Lantern. It's going to be 1080p using the low compression codec, the all intro one. Then on the other side, it's going to be the 5.7K anamorphic output that Magic Lantern lets you use. Just look at the scene. It's a bit of a challenging one. There's a lot of bright background things going on, and the subject is in shadow. The Magic Lantern output isn't just sharper, dynamic range is better too. And even if you scale the output back down to 1080p, the 5.7K looks awesome with minimal processing. Using MLV app, it's just like editing a RAW in the stills mode. You just get a lot of flexibility to grade these files, and I just think even if you did almost nothing at all, the Magic Lantern output on its own looks better than the 1080p stock codec. And on mine, I'm not using any particular picture profile, it's just a standard one. General Magic Lantern experience. For anyone who has come from Magic Lantern using the EOS M, you might think that the experience is going to be pretty seamless. And you'd be partially right about that. But there are a couple things that are different on the EOS M compared to the 5D3. And specifically, the EOS M version of Magic Lantern is just quite a bit more polished, if you can believe that. And there are a couple things I think are worth bringing up on the 5D3 that are different. Not all of it is bad, but some of it is. Most of it is. Overall, operation is just a little bit slower or more clunky. For example, startup time. 5D3 takes longer. Let's have a look. Right. So part of that was indeed because the DSLR is a DSLR. It has a flappy mirror. But it also took a while from me flipping the on button to the mirror actually going up. Additionally, the EOS M live view on Magic Lantern, as it turns out, is a little bit magical. You got a lot of options when you're setting up the EOS M. For example, Magic Zoom, that works. It's a pretty cool feature. Look it up. You got pretty fast frame rates in almost all your recording modes for your previewing. And your preview/live view is accurate, as well as having fast frame rates. On the 5D3, Magic Zoom isn't a thing. And if you're in one of the high-res or anamorphic modes, you also have to pick whether or not you want accurate framing or fast framing, not both. This does make overall the 5D3 a little more clunky, or a lot more clunky. Additionally, 5D3 also just has less baked-in presets than a lot of the EOS M firmwares. And here's one thing that I'm not sure if it's just my 5D3, but I find that my 5D3 crashes a lot more than the EOS M. While the EOS M experience isn't perfect, I didn't find the crashing to be too disruptive. I mean, yes, crashing cameras suck, but generally, when I'm using the EOS M or the 5D3, I'm shooting things at a slow pace and I can reset and take the shot again. And it just happens that the 5D3 crashes a notable amount more than the EOS M. Sometimes it's just me changing between different resolutions. Sometimes it will crash before I start the recording. Sometimes it crashes in the middle of a recording. I can't really figure it out. Now, one difference that is good on the 5D3 is that you have the option to use dual card slots. And combine that with the fact that you have SD card hacks to help you improve record times. If you can get a fast CF card and pair that with a nice SD card, you can record a lot of footage using what is called card spanning, a feature that lets you utilize both slots as needed, and MLV software in post will automatically put the video clips back together when you unload your memory cards. It's an awesome option, and if you're shooting 5D3 with Magic Lantern, highly recommend using it. Lastly, when it comes to using Magic Lantern and the 5D in general, the ergonomics on the 5D series cameras is just really nice, so I don't feel the need to rig up the 5D as much as I do when I'm shooting with the EOS M. You might have remembered when I shot with that camera, I had a lot of 3D prints on it, from handles to grips, like all sorts of stuff. Dual ISO. This is an interesting mode, and it's also supported on the EOS M, but I haven't really used it much on that since by the time I played enough around with the settings on Magic Lantern, I was doing it mainly on my 5D3. But what is it? Clearly, the EOS M and the 5D3 aren't DGO censored cameras, right? So what's up? How are you getting dual ISOs? Well, here's the thing. Someone figured out that you can make the sensor alternate between ISOs while you're reading out lines. So say you're shooting at ISO 100 and 800. When you start, let's say you might start at ISO 100. On the next line that you're reading out from the sensor, you record that at ISO 800, and you keep going until you scan the entire frame. This then gets combined as an HDR pair, and bam, dual ISO in a nutshell, apparently. But why bother shooting this mode anyways? Well, when you shoot in this mode, you can greatly expand dynamic range captured on a single frame. Reports are that you can get between 2 and a 2.5 stop improvement, which is pretty crazy. Combine that with potentially other DR hacks, and you're getting pretty close to getting 15 stops of dynamic range, it seems. I've only played with it a little bit, and I do have to say it looks pretty dang good, but I found it was quite a bit finicky on my particular 5D3, and it elicited quite a few more crashes, so I don't tend to use it that often. Plus, when using the dual ISO stuff, even less shooting aids are available. Or they're available, but they become less usable as a result of the whole like sequential scanny bits. The alternating sequential scanny bits. On top of that, I just also had a few dual ISO recordings that just straight up didn't work. Either the footage was full of weird artifacts, or like it would crash again kind of a lot. So I just didn't take the scene using dual ISO. Possibly I'm doing something wrong. This part of Magic Lantern is still pretty new to me. And I also want to note that I was not able to play with the other dynamic range hacks, so I couldn't get the extra push of more DR. I got an error about how the module that I was using to load the ISO regs was expecting an older version of Magic Lantern, so I might have to dig in and find an older copy of that somewhere on the interweb and try to play with the ISO dynamic range boosties that way. At any rate, I can tell what you're thinking. This is pretty awesome. And what's the catch? There isn't one. It's perfect. Just kidding. Of course there's a catch. There's no free lunch. I'll link to the forum post about it, but because of the way that it's sampling, flipping between two ISOs between lines, you basically lose vertical resolution in highlights and shadows. In the midtones, it's apparently fine since the exposures overlap and things are hunky-dory. But you also get increased moire issues using this mode. So there are trade-offs to be had. What does this mean for me? In particular, I don't prefer shooting the dual ISO mode. It is really cool, and I can see the appeal of it, especially in the already interpolated up anamorphic mode, where you're not worried that much about pure resolution anyways, but it's personally not for me. The flexibility of raw footage on its own is, I think, good enough for what I do, and what I do is sit in front of a camera making YouTube videos. Plus, exporting the dual ISO videos takes even more time than the normal raw video. So that's something else also to consider if you're not like me and a YouTube scrub, as it were. Now, I will incorporate some of these samples in the discussions on the other modes, and I'll just label the samples with dual ISO as they come up in the gallery. High res 1x1 3.5K. This is my favorite mode. The 3.5K scales up pretty nicely to 4K, and you can make it work with a 16:9 aspect ratio, which gives you pretty nice cinematic footage. Absolute cinema, really. Combine this with the lossless compressed 14-bit recording, and you get a heck of a lot of flexibility from the footage as well, making it so that it's possible for you to make even more absolute-er cinema. Just as a little refresher for those of you unfamiliar, the 1:1 mode refers to the fact that the mode samples all the pixels at the center of the frame with no line or pixel skipping. This results in the mode basically having a 1.6 times crop, making the footage captured about APS-C cropped. It gives you a maximum resolution of 3584 by 1730. And I tend to shoot it using the 14-bit lossless compression, but you can also then allow it to also augment again and set to 10 to 12 bits if you are having trouble with 14-bit record times. In this mode, it is pretty neat, and you can also get wider aspect ratios like 2.35 by 1, and you can also use the uncompressed 14-bit or 12-bit footage as well, but expect that you're going to get shorter record times if you do that. And this is, again, one of the modes where you have to choose between either a 5 times punched in preview or slow grayscale framing. You can't have both. As I normally shoot it, I prefer to have it set to the grayscale live view for accurate framing, and I can typically get my focus if I enable digic peaking, which then at least pops enough, just enough on the display for me to mostly be able to focus without needing to punch in. But you also do have the option of enabling the half press on the shutter button to quickly punch into the video while you're shooting and allow you to focus accurately. But I do find that sometimes when it's recording, if the camera is getting a little bogged down, using this might stop the video recording. So beware. Using the high-res mode on the 5D3, as you can maybe guess, required more tinkering than with the EOS M. With the M, I could typically select a preset, and really, if I didn't want to tinker with anything else, it would normally record a pretty chunky amount of video before things got cattywampusy. But even so, on the 5D3, just a little more tweaking, you can get pretty good record times, and I find the raw output pretty awesome, even if I do have to drop the bitrate to get more reasonable record times. Combine this stuff all together, and the 5D3 lets you have highly detailed footage, great dynamic range, and a crop that is only 1.6 times. Let's have a look at some of those samples. .7K Anamorphic. So this mode suffers from the same issues as the 3.5K when it comes to how your live view works. Again, you have to either choose between a grayscale live view that is accurate but kind of slow, or a punched in live view. But on top of that, you get the bonus of punching in the punched in video being squeezed. So it looks a little bit weird, and sometimes focusing does get tricky in this mode if you are using the punched in view. If anyone knows if there's another way you can change it up or make the live view a little better, let me know. I found that, yeah, it's best for me to just stick to the grayscale preview and work that way. But yeah, it's pretty weird. Just as a reminder though, the 5.7K video is where the vertical resolution is maintained, but the 3 pixels across are binned into 1. So the actual recorded pixels is 1920 by 2340. And when processed, the video in MLV RAW ends up outputting a resolution of 5760 by 2340, which is 5.7K. And it also utilizes the full width of the sensor. And again, in my EOS M video, all this means that the 5.7K isn't true 5.7K. In the case of the 5D3, the recorded spatial resolution is actually around 4.5 megapixels per frame, whereas actual 5.7K you would expect to be recording around 13.5 megapixels. For reference, UHD 4K is supposed to be around 8.3 megapixels. So the 5.7K scaled down to 4K still looks pretty good, but you're not getting actual 4K resolutions. But you still get that raw grading flexibility that you get from, shooting raw footage. So there's that. Now let's have a look at the samples from this mode.
Here's the question though. Is it better than Magic Lantern on the EOS M? Technically, in a technical way, it is better. You get more pixels in the high-res mode, you get more in the anamorphic mode, although in the anamorphic it's not a huge jump. However, all of this comes with a price, as I mentioned throughout the video. The modes aren't nearly as well developed as they are for the EOS M, especially when it comes to quality of life features that you might expect when you come from the EOS M. And the result is the 5D3, to me, is a more challenging camera to use. Not only because the quality of life stuff isn't there, but just because I find that it is less stable than the EOS M Magic Lantern firmwares. Maybe down the line, with renewed life that is being breathed into Magic Lantern this year, we'll see more updates to bring the 5D3 experience more in line with the EOS M when it comes to quality of life features, but I don't know what the future has in store for the 5D3. On top of that, the 5D3 is a lot bigger, so it ain't going to be called the pocket rocket the way the EOS M was. And although I have less stuff bolted on my 5D3, which is nice, even with my EOS M being kitted out with everything from grips, handles, external battery pack, it was overall still lighter than the 5D3. And with that stuff on, it handled better as well. That being said, the 5D3 starts off better handling on its own than the EOS M on its own. So there are some trade-offs to be had there. But I do think that the additions I put on my EOS M had a pretty big impact on the usability of that compared to similar attachments to the 5D3, which I think had a smaller impact due to the already nice ergonomics of that camera to begin with. Lastly, the 5D3 produces bigger files, and I noticed that processing these files took noticeably longer than with the EOS M. All of that said, I personally still prefer shooting with the 5D3 over the EOS M. Part of that is the native EF lens mount on the 5D3. With the EOS M, I was using an EF to EFM adapter, which didn't help with the camera's balance. The other aspect that I really liked about the 5D3 is the 3.5K high-res mode being only a 1.6 times crop. So I found that composition was just a little more convenient for me. With the EOS M and the high-res 3K mode, it's cropped in to around 2.7 times, and it just made framing up a little more uncomfortable. Additionally, I liked the output of the 5D3 as well, and you might have noticed I used a lot of B-roll that I shot with the 5D3 in my other videos. If you've watched my other camera reviews, you've definitely seen the 5D3 B-roll. It would be the videos of the camera close-ups. Lastly, with the 5D3, it's also just really nice to be able to pop into stills mode and go back into just using it as a stills-based DSLR. I know, you could also do the same thing with the EOS M, but the EOS M as a stills camera is, it's not my favorite. But the 5D3 as a stills camera is excellent. It's got an OVF, it's got a pretty nice ergonomic setup, it's a 5D after all, so things are pretty great and jumping between them is pretty excellent. Plus, the 5D3's autofocus system is just generally pretty nice for stills, so yeah, it's just nice to have the flexibility to do that. Just for a bit of context, ever since I got the EOS M, I have still yet to use it to take photos. If I'm using it at all, it's essentially on Magic Lantern full-time. Whereas with the 5D3, I find myself constantly switching between the two. And whether or not it is just flipping between stills and video here, or whether or not I'm popping out the CF card and running it without Magic Lantern at all, it's fairly quick, fairly seamless, and I really like that ability to change over. Recommendation and conclusion. For those of you who are already deep in the Lantern, the 5D3 is pretty awesome. Sure, there are quality of life issues to work around, but the output is unmistakably pretty great. Plus, looking around at the used prices currently of EOS M cameras, I am reminded that even though my video is just a couple months old, the used landscape or used camera gear landscape is constantly changing. And I suppose for some reason the EOS M has some renewed interest, which has resulted in the average sale price of these things climbing, making the 5D3 an even sweeter deal by comparison. And while of course the 5D3 is still more spendy, it is after all a full-frame DSLR, and even without the magical lanterns, it's still a pretty good camera. But here's the thing. With enough patience, you can actually get a 5D3 that it doesn't cost that much more than the average price of an EOS M these days, which is, from what I'm seeing, around 300 to 350 Canadian buckaroos, whatever that is in American dollars. So I purchased my 5D3 for 500 Canadian buckaroos, and that is around 360 USD at the time of this video recording. And I purchased mine at a local retail shop. Mine is pretty banged up, sure, but doesn't stop me from shooting it. And I've seen 5D3s online go for as low as 450 Canadian buckaroos, roughly 325 USD. Although I will say the average for the 5D3 is more like 600 to 700 Canadian buckaroos, or 470 to 505 USD. On the plus side, another thing about the 5D3 is that it is generally more easy to find than the EOS M. So that's also something to consider. The 5D3, I think, is a pretty perfect camera for someone who isn't quite committed to full-time magic lanterning. Someone who wants to go between stills and video mode and have a good experience with both. If you are only interested in magic lantern and only in video stuff, I probably would still suggest getting the EOS M over the 5D3. But I would also encourage that if you're going to do that, get the EF to EFM adapter to unlock the big catalog of EF glass, since the EFM glass catalog is kind of small. All right, I gushed on quite a bit about Magic Lantern. You might have guessed I like this stuff. But for now, that's all I got. But before we do go, I do want to know, do you like the Magic Lanterns as well? And if you do, what cameras do you use the lantern on? As always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, maybe a super thanks if you're into that. Till next time, bye.